Welcome, Exiles, to my theory craft on BoneShatter, Pillar of the Cage God, Juggernaut. Now, BoneShatter is one of the gems in the new release that I thought were pretty cool, and it instantly got me thinking, this is a Pillar of the Cage God dream. It does so many things well. It has flat fizz. There's not too many gems that do that. When you look at Pillar of the Cage God, you're ended up with the choices of like Cyclone and Sweep, which are not super interesting if you've done those a lot of times and you want something new, something fresh. It also has the nice additive bonus of being very high damage. The base damage at level 1 is 200%, which is more than most of your melee gems. And then on top of that, that's going to scale. It'll probably scale like 250%, maybe higher. Frankly, just for perspective, you could look at a gem like Heavy Strike, which is solely about hitting one enemy and hitting it hard. At level 20, I think it goes up to 250%, and like level 1, it's like 180%, so it starts lower than BoneShatter. So right off the bat, it's going to hit similar base damage to Heavy Strike. Then you add in the fact that it gives you base fizz, and you get trauma multiplier to your damage. And trauma, from what I've gathered from Chris's interview or Q&A, is that's going to stack pretty much as we want it to. We're not going to be able to hit the limit. So my idea is, if we take BoneShatter, it works really well with Pillar of the Cage God. Then we mix it in with a Juggernaut. Juggernaut is somebody who can stack strength and then get a lot of accuracy, so you're always going to be hitting your enemies, which isn't too big of a deal because I wasn't too sure I'd want to go crit or anything. But the main thing that is good for is hitting enemies a lot to gain trauma stacks, as well as to mitigate those trauma damage, the self-damage you're taking, because you have good armor, you can scale armor well, you can scale fizz reduction, you're going to be soaking up that damage just fine. And then you're also going to be able to scale a decent amount of accuracy, which scales a lot of attack speed. So the idea I'm thinking is we get multi-strike, we get the trauma stacks up high, we absorb the damage, and we can get a pretty big damage multiplier from that. So that excites me. Another nice synergy I see is the take 6 physical damage per trauma when you gain trauma. I'm not sure if this will work or not, but it'd be cool if it did. It might have synergy with Unbreakable. Unbreakable says the 1.5% of total damage prevented from hits in the past 10 seconds is regenerated as life. I don't know if the taking 6 physical damage will count as a hit, but if it does, then you could also stack up quite a bit of regen just from the damage you're mitigating due to having, we're going to be able to scale a decent amount of armor and decent amount of fizz reduction with Jugg. So I think that's got some nice synergy as well. Along with that, the other possibilities I'm thinking about Jugg is we for sure have to take this endurance charge node, which is nice for just, keeping endurance charges up, extra endurance charge, that's defensive. But then I'm having a hard time deciding whether or not I want to go unstoppable, so that way I'm immune to stun, and I have the ability to already have my freeze mitigation built into the build. Action speed cannot be modified. We're going to be very much in pain where we want to avoid temp chains maps at all costs. There is no curse removal flask anymore, basically. So something like this could feel really good to make it so temp chains maps don't feel bad. So that's an option, but I'm not 100% sold on this one yet. So I'm between that and Unrelenting. Either way, you're going to be tanky, or you're going to have some guaranteed consistency in your movement speed and attack speed. So one of those could go or work. Haven't really decided. I think either would be pretty solid, and they have their pluses and minuses. Along with this, I have done basically a pretty generic tree outline. When I theory craft things, it's not about creating a bunch of specific gear. It's not about putting the skill into PoB and figuring out the exact damage number before I get the build and before I play it. I just want to get an idea that has a strong foundation, where it has multipliers that make sense, things that make sense. I want to look at the the general big picture idea and see if I think everything adds up to work. Now, a lot of times, depending on how solid my idea is, there can be a pretty high chance of success, and there's always a small chance of failure, and that gets bigger the more risky I get with the experimentation. But it's a part of the game I don't want to give up. I love the not knowing feature, or the I don't know how good this could be, I don't know how far this will go. I like to keep that in mind, so I never go all in on PoBs, so I'm sorry if you guys wanted a fully fleshed out PoB. That's just not something I want to do. So I work off of these sorts of things. I look at the big picture idea of things we're going to get, things that work. And I'm going through, and these are just the overarching ideas I see that work with the build. For defensive layers, I can see us getting 75% block, just because if we use the Iron Fortress chest piece, you can get blocked very easily from strength stacking. I look at Fizz mitigation being high, so we're going to have some nice defensive layers there. We're going to have regen and overleech, because I'm planning to do a build where we're stacking strength, stacking life, and then we're taking advantage of Bloodthirst with Pillar of the Cage God, which is huge for a good amount of damage. So we'll have regen, we'll have overleech, and we should have a fairly high EHP. We're going to lose a little bit of it from using Petrified Blood to get down to low life, but the upside is we get overleech and we get a lot of damage from Bloodthirst. So that's kind of what I'm thinking there for defensive layers. This should pretty much handle the vast majority of things. This should feel, and in the end game, this should feel quite tanky, should feel pretty reliable. You'll still not be like 100% immortal, but the consistency really should be there. And then for the offensive layers, I'm thinking of Bloodthirst gives you a lot of flat fizz based on the high life pool we're going to have with strength stacking with a lot of percent life on the tree. I'm also thinking Pillar of the Cage God, strength stacking damage, that's going to be good as well. We got Jugg attack speed, and then we're probably using Impale because we are Fizz already. I don't feel the need to go conversion. We potentially could go all the way over here, do a cluster duel setup over here instead of here, and then we can have better split personalities type of thing, and then we can do elemental conversion. But I think that's too much effort to get the elemental conversion right, so I'm leaning towards just remaining Fizz and being happy with it. And the other things I'm thinking is, if I'm thinking League Start, I'm thinking Strength Stackers have really cheap key uniques. Pillar of the Cage God, for example, by the time I get to level 12 or 13, the level I can equip Pillar of the Cage God, there's a good chance I've dropped an Alk or a Chaos every now and then. The reality is Pillar of the Cage God is one of those uniques that's usually an Alk or a Chaos basically from day one, on day one, a few hours into the league. It's going to be cheap. The second you buy it, you equip it, you're going to get carried by it through the campaign. That's pretty much always been the case whenever I've used this item. It feels very good for leveling. It's easy, and everything you do scales it. Every passive you get, even if you're just getting 10 strength, a 10 strength note, it feels good. And there's other key uniques that are going to be cheap as well. Cyclopean Coil is going to be maybe a few days in that you get this. You might start off with something like just like a Belt of the Deceiver, but that'll eventually be cheap. Astramentus usually isn't too bad early on. Buy the Polymath cards. You can buy it kind of fractionally buying the Polymath cards. That will be one of your more expensive items, but still nothing like overly extreme in price. Alberons is usually not too bad. Meganords, these Steel Gauntlets, these are normally like an Alk or Chaos. They're pretty cheap early on. An Iron Fortress shouldn't be too bad. The main cost is going to be the Prophecy, but the reality is items like these are very, very much on the low end of budget, and then other things you're filling up are just going to be rares with strength and life. And for a lot of these gear pieces, rares with strength and life until you can afford the unique is pretty much all you're going for. You'll be fixing the res through rares as well, getting rares with res, and you'll get jewel sockets with res and life as well. And it should be pretty easy to cap out your res. You'll have endurance charges for res as well. You'll have fizz mitigation from endurance charges, and you'll get armor on your gear and armor from Juggernaut. So that's kind of the idea I'm going with here. This is one of the possible potential starters I'm thinking about. And I'm going to make a couple more videos like this, I'm thinking, based on the skills I am most excited about and I have a theory craft in my head for. So one of the other ones I'm thinking about doing, for example, is Explosive Concoction, and maybe a couple others. So I figured I would just put this out there, get you guys, I don't know, so to tell you guys what I'm thinking. I always like to go through and do multiple theory crafts before the league starts, so I figured I'd share these. I don't know if this is a good idea or not, if you guys like me sharing my theory crafts on builds I'm thinking about doing for the league start, but this is one of the ones I thought of, and I think it has a good potential. If it's something up your alley, I think it could be huge, or it could be nice. I was going to quick go through this also. I forgot to go over this real quick, but BoneShatter, this is the preview of it. This is one of the things I wanted to say about why I think it's going to feel pretty solid in terms of clear and not feel too bad. Like, you think Juggernaut, you think Pillar of the Cage God, you think Strike Skill, you probably don't think the clear is going to be very good. But I think the clear is going to feel just fine. The area effect on these you can kind of see the rings of how far they go. The reality is you get area of effect on the gem based on how hard you stun the enemy. And when you're clearing a map, you're pretty much always hitting a white mob or a blue mob or even a rare mob. The reality is you're one-shotting these things. You're going to be hitting it for almost the maximum stun pretty much every time. You're always going to have these huge stuns as you're running through the map. You just throw an Ancestral Call, you hit 3 or 4 enemies all with a pretty big stun, and it's going to always pretty much clear one-shot packs. I think with you stacking a lot of attack speed, you can just leap slam around, one-shot in packs. I think it'll feel pretty decent. So I just wanted to show you that, guys. I'm sure you've already seen this video of what BoneShatter looks like in mapping, but I think it has a pretty cool animation of the gray smoke just going out from the impact of your hammer, your axe, whatever you're hitting these enemies with. So anyways, that's one of the potential build starters I'm thinking about doing. I haven't really decided. I'm going to make a couple more videos on the other build starters I'm thinking about doing, but this is one of them, and I wanted to share it with you. So that's the video, guys. Thanks for watching. You guys have an excellent rest of your day, and good luck on theory crafting, guys.